Alright, so congratulations, you've completed the PhoneGap and Intel XDK course. I'd just like to briefly go over what we've learned and what we've done here. In Chapter 1, we talked about just the mobile internet in general, trends, mobile versus desktop. We looked at some statistics. We saw that mobile web browsing has tripled in the last 2 years. We looked at the types of apps available, native, web, and of course hybrid, which is what we've been creating. We looked at the pros and cons of native and web, and we did some refreshers on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery. Chapter 2 was a big chapter. We learned all about PhoneGap and what it is. We learned the platform choices, platforms we can develop for, which is basically all of them. We looked at the older way of developing an Android app with PhoneGap, and that's with the Android SDK and the Eclipse plugin. And then we looked at PhoneGap Build, which is the much easier way to build and deploy a PhoneGap application. And of course we set up GitHub so we could push our repository right to PhoneGap Build. And then we built a very simple app which just told us device information about the device that the app is running on. And I showed you how to install using an APK installer onto an Android device. We looked at some location features and just physical type apps like the accelerometer. We could see the readings depending on the X, Y, and Z axis. Geolocation we looked at. We grabbed the latitude and longitude, altitude, speed, and some other stuff. And then we went and created a map and put a marker on the map that represented our location. And we tested this both in the emulator and on the physical device. Next, we looked at the camera, capture, and contacts API, and those are three separate APIs. We took pictures and also imported pictures from our library using the camera API. We used the capture API to take pictures, capture images, and also to capture audio and display file information on our screen. And then we created a small app that allowed us to add contacts from our application to the contacts on the device. File and storage was a big deal. It was a big chapter. We downloaded a file from the web using an input box. We created and wrote to a file and put it on the file system. We learned about the great jQuery mobile framework and how that's implemented. And we could read from the directories. We read the root directory with all the files and folders. And then we moved on to our task project, which is a very lightweight task manager. We built it first with local storage and then again with web SQL database, so we could see how the two differentiated. Then we moved on from PhoneGap to Intel XDK, went over that, installed that, the Chrome extension. We used the app starter to create a base shell for our application. We learned about the app framework, and we started our Eduonix app, which included a couple different APIs. The AppMobi API is basically the XDK API. It's pretty much the same thing. We built onto our app that we created with AppStarter, and we implemented geolocation. We used the camera to take and import pictures. We implemented the accelerometer, and we also added contact functionality. We could add, view, and choose contacts. And finally, we set up App Lab so we could test out our app on our device. And I showed you about how Intel XDK does its debugging with the script we included, so we could see the console and see all our logs and so forth. And we went over submitting apps to the app stores, and that included things like icon and image requirements, text limitations, and the links to submit your apps. So there's a lot of information in this course. I really enjoyed doing it, and I hope you enjoyed taking it, and I hope you further your education in mobile app development. Thanks.